a little bit about your history in law enforcement and maybe where you've landed right now.
Sure, thank you very much. I've been in law enforcement now for 33 years. I currently serve as the police chief for the Maryland National Capital Park Police in Montgomery County, Maryland. Prior to that, I retired from the county police. My current duties consist of a full-service agency that oversees 400 different parks in Montgomery County, spread over 37,000 acres and about 490 square miles. A very diverse community of a little over 1 million people, just outside of Washington, D.C. My previous assignment was with the county police, where I ultimately retired as an assistant chief. I had served as assistant chief over the Patrol Bureau and also Field Services Bureau. During that tenure, I had the pleasure of working in various units to include Community Services, Director of Internal Affairs, District Commander, Special Operations, and as I stated before, an Assistant Chief. And I had plenty of opportunities to work with members in the faith community, civic organizations, community at large, government organizations, and also business organizations as well.
What brought you to Lincoln?
The city itself and also the reputation and the quality of the agency, Lincoln Police Department itself. The city itself reminds me of Montgomery County in that it's very progressive, it's very well organized, but also the different agency groups seem to work very well together. Just as importantly, the agency itself sits on a very solid foundation, a CALEA accredited agency, and also one that is very progressive as well. And it doesn't hurt that my youngest daughter attends Iowa State, so we got a good feel for the Midwest over the last few years. And my wife and I are almost empty nesters now, and looking for Chapter 2, and we thought this would be a great place to finish Chapter 2 in our lives.
If you are named the chief of Lincoln Police, what would be your #1 goal for the department?
Well, certainly police community relations. We are only as strong as community support, but also I want to ensure that we take care of our employees as well, as it relates to employee development, employee wellness as well. So although I can't necessarily pick just one, those two would be priorities that I see of equal value.
Being in your time here today, how would you sort of describe the mood or the culture of LPD, and how would you liken it to maybe where you are? What are some differences that you've maybe seen between the two?
The only difference I know is that it's just simply smaller, but when I interacted with the members today, both commission and non-commissioned members, they are very much proud of their agency. They're also readily willing to provide thoughts and ideas of how we move forward. They truly love their community. They truly love Lincoln itself. And I'm very excited about the potential that exists here within Lincoln, within the Lincoln Police Department specifically.
Real quick, so what are your thoughts on body-worn cameras for police officers? And would you be willing to release that video to the public and the media after an incident were to occur where body-worn cameras may be of use to the media and the public? And how soon would you release those videos?
Well, I come from an agency in Maryland where we were one of the first large agencies across the nation to actually go to body-worn cameras across the entire agency. So I've been familiar with body-worn cameras for a fairly good amount of time. I do believe in sharing information with the public as soon as possible, but not compromising due process as well. One of the reasons why I believe in sooner than later is because the community has a right to know, but it's important also that we dispel any rumors that may be false as well. So to what degree we can share body-worn camera about exactly what happened and when it happened without violating any existing state laws or contractual rules and regulations, I believe it's important for the sake of healthy police community relations.
What would you do in your role to address racial bias in policing?
Well, first of all, you have to live what you expect others to do and be. In my current agency, we made it a point, well before the George Floyd murder, unfortunately, to engage in matters such as cultural competency training, implicit bias training, conflict resolution training, crisis intervention training, not only for our what we call sworn members, but also non-sworn members or civilian members as well. So I think it's very important because just like Montgomery County, Lincoln is also becoming more diverse, and it's important that we respect and can appreciate the diversity within our respective communities, and that our diversity should be considered a strength, not something that divides us.
To go off of what you just said about diversity, how can we strengthen our diversity here in Lincoln? How will you help facilitate that strength with the community and with the police force in general?
One of the things we have to do is make sure everybody has a seat at the table. It's hard to, let's say, have disagreements with each other when you're breaking bread together. I have found that it's important to bring different parties together where we can have honest and open discussions, but just as importantly, again, celebrating diversity. So I believe in things such as monthly community liaison groups, if you will, so that not only can we keep communication lines open, but we can also solve problems together. And I believe that's very important, both within an agency and also within the community as well. Communication is key.
When it comes to recruitment, LPD is a vast majority white, it's a vast majority male. Is recruitment diversity something that you will focus on if you were to take over here?
Absolutely. It's been a focus of mine probably for the better part of 20 years. I now work in a community that used to be a majority white community. It's now a majority minority community. I've seen that change over the course of a good 20 years or so. But one of the things I have found also in coming to an agency, you want to ensure it's diversified from within. Not only within those who are coming in, but also in the command structure as well. So not only have I had success in the last year I was with the county police, we saw 54% of our recruit class be people of color and or women. Within the last 2 years of my time with the Park Police, last 2 years, 66% have been women or members of color. That's been intentional as far as revamping our recruitment processes so that we can better reflect what the community itself looks like and to a degree exceed some of those expectations as well.
You mentioned communication with the community earlier. How visible do you think that the chief of police should be in terms of communicating with the city?
I believe that the police chief should probably be one of the most visible members within government. Let's face it, even police departments across the nation are generally the most visible governmental entity that most people will see on a consistent basis. I believe that 75% of leadership is quite frankly being present. One of the things that we really believe in when I was with the county police was that we turn down no invitations, if you will, or don't turn down any invitations. Can't be in two places at the same time, but we'll make a way, obviously, to eventually make it around. So I believe it's important that the community have access to the police chief consistently, whether it be in person, whether it be by email or even Zoom now. But it's also just as important that the police chief be available to those within the agency as well. So I do believe in getting out of the office, walking around, and also listening to the employees, that they be a part of the team that we're building, and also part of the solutions, if you will, the new initiatives.
Mental health has taken taken off in this country in terms of the talking about, which is great, I think. What are your thoughts on having mental health liaisons or officers go out to calls for people in mental distress, either with officers or as their own entity, going out to specific calls where maybe the person is known to be mentally distressed?
I believe it's an absolute necessity in our society. I've been involved in co-response models for the better part of 25 years. Where I come from, we've got a mobile crisis team, if you will, that's under a different agency, but we have regularly responded to calls together, and many times they would take the lead. One of the things I also had the pleasure of doing was leading our crisis response and support team internally. Not only did it consist of specially trained officers and those with specialty skills from the community, such as clinical social work, but they were embedded as one team to help with peer support issues, mental health issues within the community, but also serving members who have addictions through deflection models, and also members of the intellectual disability community as well. So I have found that to be extremely important. It not only does it keep people from prison who should really receive assistance and help, but it also literally saves lives. On emergency calls, we also take them with us, and many times they're the other voice on the phone, if you will, helping with the negotiations in the process.
You mentioned that this is sort of your second chapter in your career. You're becoming an empty nester. How long do you envision, or what would be an ideal amount of time to be a chief if you were to take over the position? And would you want to be someone to cultivate maybe the next one from an internal hire, or how would you see maybe your time in that tenure?
I believe that a rising tide lifts all boats, and I believe one of the responsibilities of any leader is to always reach back to ensure that those others within the agency are being developed as well, so that eventually they can take his or her job. I expect, if I'm appointed, to be the Lincoln Police Chief for a long time. I fully expect to be here for not only a time in which I could be considered a member of the community, but also a known and trusted member within the agency itself. So it'll be my pleasure and honor, but at the same time, I believe it's always important to ensure you engage employee development, and it also ultimately will be up to the appointing authority to determine who would replace me eventually when my time is up.
So you talk about trust. There's kind of, after George Floyd and everything else, there's kind of been a falling of trust in police officers across the country. How do you, as a police chief, how would you want to help build trust back in police departments across the community here in Lincoln?
One of the things we have to do is make sure that we reduce the gap between reality and perception. Many times that gap will exist because of a lack of information. One of the things I believe in doing is inviting the community in to the police department. I would love to see a Citizens Academy here within the police department, but I believe it's also important that when we're making critical decisions, that they be allowed in the planning process, if you will, to be a partner with us. There are many, many great resources within our community, whether it's through academia, whether it's through business community, whether it's through other governmental entities, or just simply private citizens, nonprofits. To what degree you can inform them where they realize that they're a part of the process, we become one team. I think it goes back to the initial intent of policing, as Sir Robert Peel saw when developing the Metropolitan London Police. He talked about the police are the public, and the public is the police. And I believe that's the model that every modern day agency should focus on, that we should be working together, sharing information back and forth, regularly communicating with one another, and also sharing our strengths and weaknesses with one another as well, as one team.
Last I checked, you're also a finalist for a police chief job in North Carolina. Is there a reason you're seeking two jobs at once? I guess how can Lincoln citizens know that you're really committed to coming here if you're also committed elsewhere?
No, it's a fair question, and one of the things about police chief searches, first of all, in both of those searches, I was proactively contacted by national recruiters who happen to know of me and my capabilities and also my accomplishments. So it was an honor to be asked, if you will. But sometimes those processes are advertised at the same time. When one looks at things that are important to he or she, for me, the type of city, obviously, that my wife would be happy with as well, but also the type of agency in which I believe you can make a significant positive difference. Those two agencies stood out. But they also had suspense dates. And because you can't assume that you're even going to be a finalist, it's important and prudent, quite frankly, to apply to both at the same time. And I feel very blessed to be a finalist here in this process here in Lincoln Police Department. And if I'm ultimately appointed, I'd be grateful to serve the community members and also the agency members as well.
More questions?
Is today your first trip to Lincoln, or what have you seen so far?
I tell you, they gave me a great tour. It was about an hour and a half, if you will, of the city. I was extremely impressed by how organized the city is. It's very evident that when planning is done within this city, it's done with the eye of what works best for Lincoln and what makes sense. I have found that it's a city that really maximizes its resources. I think it was a sunken garden, if you will, that used to be a landfill. That was a great idea and a perfect use of that location. So I see it as a great place to live, work, and I have children who are young adults now, so not raise a family for me, but for anybody else who's raising a family, a great place to be.